Welcome to The Explainer. All right, let's talk about something that hits home for literally every single developer, whether you're just starting out or you've been at this for decades. How do you keep your projects from spiraling into a chaotic, unmanageable mess?
And you know, this question, pulled straight from a developer on Reddit, it just gets right to the heart of it, doesn't it? As a project grows, the complexity just explodes. And if you don't have a solid plan, a clear structure, you can get lost in your own creation, like really fast.
Now, this reply, obviously a joke, right? But it paints such a vivid picture of the ultimate code nightmare. I mean, it's basically the digital version of just throwing everything you own into one giant room. No closets, no shelves, just stuff. Okay, let's dive into this and see how we can build a solid foundation right from the get-go.
Okay, so where do we even begin? We're going to start with the big picture, the master blueprint for any digital project. And that's its file and folder structure. Honestly, this is probably the first and maybe the most important organizational call you're going to make.
And you should think of it exactly like the architectural blueprint for a house. Seriously, it tells you where everything goes, right? From the foundation all the way to the roof. It makes sure you know exactly where to find the plumbing when you need it and, where all the electrical wires are supposed to run. And this whole system creates what we call a directory tree. You've got the root, that's your main project folder. Then you have parent folders for the big sections. And then inside those, you have child subfolders for all the nitty-gritty stuff. What you end up with is this super clear, logical, and easy to navigate path to every single file in your project.
And look, there are a ton of ways you can drop this blueprint. You could organize everything around specific projects or campaigns, or maybe you group things by department. Marketing stuff here, HR stuff there, or you could even just go by the type of file. All your images in one place, all your videos in another. The absolute key here, the most important part, is picking a system that makes sense to you and then, and this is crucial, sticking with it.
All right, so we've got our folders all nice and tidy. But here's the thing. Structure doesn't just stop there, not even close. Let's zoom in, way in, from that high-level blueprint right down to the actual building blocks inside each and every one of our files.
And this quote from the MDM web docs, man, this is so important. Using the right code element for the job, what we call semantic HTML, it might sound like some nerdy technical detail, but it's not. It is an absolutely critical feature, especially for users who rely on things like screen readers to navigate the web.
Just look at this comparison. It shows a really profound difference, not just in the code, but in the meaning. On the left, you've got a well-structured page. Every single element has a clear purpose. It's telling browsers, screen readers, and search engines exactly what each piece of content is. But on the right, you've got chaos. To a sighted user, it might look the same. But underneath the surface, it's just a jumble of elements that only care about style, not substance.
And this really shows how good structure pays off in so many ways. For one, it makes your site way more findable for search engines. That's good for SEO. It's often lighter, meaning a smaller file size, which makes it faster on mobile devices. And honestly, it just makes the code so much easier for you and your whole team to read, to understand, and to work on.
Okay, let's really see how this works in practice. We're going to zoom in on just a single, super common element, the ordered list. It seems so simple, right? But it is packed with structural meaning.
So the OL element, this is what you use when you have an ordered list of items. And the key difference from just a regular bulleted list and UL is that with OL, the order is meaningful. It matters. You'd use this for things where the sequence is absolutely vital, like the steps in a recipe, or turn-by-turn driving directions, or maybe the final rankings in a race. And here's the simple test you can always use. If you scrambled the items, would the meaning change? Think about that recipe again. If you try to bake the cake before you mix the ingredients, well, you're going to have a problem, right? So if the answer is yes, if scrambling it changes the meaning, then you need an ordered list. It provides this built-in structural meaning that a simple list of bullet points just can't.
And what's really cool is that even within this one element, you can add even more layers of structure. You can tell it to run in reverse order. You can have it start counting from, say, number 4 instead of number 1. You can even change the numbering type to Roman numerals or letters. Each of these little attributes is a command telling the browser exactly how to present this very specific, ordered information.
Okay, so we've talked about the macro-level folder structure, and we've talked about the micro-level code. But how do they actually connect? How do they talk to each other? Well, the answer lies in the paths we create that link them all together.
Okay, just imagine this super simple project for a second. We've got a CSS folder for our style sheets, and we've got an images folder for our images. Pretty standard stuff, right?
So here's the question. How does our style sheet, which is sitting inside the CSS folder, find the image which is over in the Images folder? This is a classic everyday challenge for a web developer, and the solution depends entirely on understanding the folder structure that we've so carefully created.
And the magic here, it's all in that little .. It's like a command that lets you navigate the directory tree. It's basically saying, hey, from where I am right now, inside styles.css, I need you to go up one level to the main project folder, and then go back down into the images folder to find that image.jpg file.
So the really crucial point here, as the official spec says, is that the path is always relative to the CSS file itself, not the HTML page it's being used on. And this is just a perfect example of how our big picture folder structure directly impacts the tiny little details of the code we write every single day.
Okay, let's pull the camera all the way back out. We've got this multi-layered understanding of structure now, from the folders to the files to the code itself. So let's go back and finally answer that original Reddit question about how to handle really large projects.
For those big, complex applications, experts often recommend strategies like organizing by feature, so all the code for the checkout process lives together in one spot. Or you can organize by what they call business domains, like authentication or the customer profile. These are just high-level patterns, but they're built on the exact same principles of logical hierarchy we've been talking about. And of course, to keep everyone on a team on the same page, developers use tools, things like linters and formatters, to automatically enforce all these structural rules.
And that's really the big takeaway here. Structure isn't just about organizing files to be neat. It's about creating a project that is maintainable, that's scalable, and that's accessible both for the developers working on it and for the users interacting with it. Taking that time up front to build a strong structure from that top-level folder tree all the way down to a single line of semantic HTML, that's what lets a project grow and evolve without collapsing into total chaos.
But that leaves us with a really interesting question to think about, right? In a world of AI-powered code generation and super complex frameworks, does this human-centric approach to structure, does it still matter? As our tools get smarter and, do more of the work for us, I'd actually argue that these foundational principles of clear, logical, human-readable organization, they might just become more important than ever before.